Shark saved this boy's life. Jace Waverly had always felt invisible. At 14, his life in Clearwater, Florida, a city known for its sun-drenched beaches and smiling tourists, was anything but warm. The sea was bright, the skies blue, but Jace's world was gray. He lived in a small one-bedroom apartment with his father, Rick, a commercial fisherman who had grown cold after the loss of his wife, Jace's mother, 5 years earlier. Ever since that day, Jace had been more of a ghost than a son. His father barely looked at him, speaking only when it concerned chores or curfews. At school, things weren't better. Jace's quiet nature made him an easy target. The kids called him Barnacle Boy, teased him for his tattered clothes and silent demeanor. But none of that hurt as much as feeling like he didn't matter to the only parent he had left. It was a humid Thursday when it all became too much. Jace had returned from school with a bruised lip, his backpack slashed open with scissors by a group of classmates who found it funny to dump his books into the canal. He walked home soaking wet after trying to retrieve them. His father was in the kitchen, cracking open a beer. "Look at you," Rick muttered, barely glancing up. Jace waited for something more. Anything. A question, a gesture, a sign that he cared. But nothing came, and that was when Jace decided he'd had enough. He left that night. Slipped out at 11:42 p.m. with nothing but a flashlight, a photo of his mom, and the clothes on his back. He walked for nearly 2 hours down the dark coastal highway until he reached the old pier at Crystal Sands Beach, the one his mom used to take him to before everything fell apart. The tide was high, the moon full. The waves sang lullabies that pulled at his soul. He stepped to the edge of the pier. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he whispered to the ocean, "I'm ready." And he jumped. The coldness hit him like 1,000 knives. The current pulled, twisted, and wrapped around him like a shroud. But Jace didn't fight it. He sank willingly, eyes closed, thinking of his mother's smile. But then something happened. A sensation, foreign, electric, rushed through his veins. He opened his eyes. Below him, through the murky water, shadows moved. 5 of them. Sleek, muscular, circling. Sharks. His lungs burned. Panic surged. But instead of charging, the sharks glided around him in a gentle spiral, as if protecting him. And then, a flashlight beam sliced the darkness from a nearby fishing boat. A voice screamed out over the roar of the waves. "Kid, hold on!" A moment later, strong arms pulled him from the sea. The last thing Jace saw before blacking out was one of the sharks swimming beside the boat, close enough to touch. He woke in a small cabin. A fire crackled. Warm clothes clung to his shivering body. An older man sat beside him, sipping tea. "You're lucky I was out there tonight," the man said. "You'd be fish food if it weren't for those sharks. Never seen anything like it." Jace blinked. Why didn't they attack me? The man, Joe Harper, a retired marine conservationist, just stared into the flames. "Sometimes the ocean knows what we don't, and sometimes we're not alone, even when we think we are." Joe kept Jace hidden for the next 2 days, giving him food, shelter, and, more importantly, gentleness. They talked about the sea, about life, about pain. Jace told Joe things he'd never told anyone. Joe told him something too. "I used to know your mother." Jace's heart skipped. She was a marine biologist, brilliant, kind. She once saved a baby shark that had washed up near here, stayed with it all night. "Your dad, he was different back then, alive. When she passed, part of him went with her." That night, Jace cried for the first time in years. Joe convinced Jace to let him take him home. They arrived just before dawn. Rick was standing in the driveway looking 10 years older than when Jace left. He didn't speak, just pulled his son into a hug so fierce it hurt. The story might have ended there, but fate had other plans. A week later, a viral video took over the internet. Joe had secretly mounted a GoPro on his boat. It captured the exact moment Jace fell into the water, and the sharks circled him, not to harm, but to protect. The footage hit over 40 million views in 3 days. Shark guardian angels? Boy saved by nature, a real-life miracle. Reporters swarmed Clearwater. Interviews were requested. Offers were made. But Jace stayed quiet until a particular visitor arrived. Her name was Dr. Maya Bennett. She ran the Marine Rescue Foundation in Miami. She had studied shark behavior for 20 years and recognized something no one else had. These sharks are part of a study your mother started, she told Jace. They were tagged years ago and have shown rare patterns. Empathetic responses. Your mom believed animals feel more than we can prove. Maya showed Jace the research, his mother's name, in neat cursive, on pages of notes. She had been tracking those very sharks when she died in a diving accident. I think they remembered her scent, Maya said softly. I think when they sensed you, they felt her. The word sent chills down Jace's spine. The attention brought opportunity. A major documentary network wanted to fund a film about Jace's story. They offered a scholarship in his name for marine biology students. Maya asked if he'd consider joining her research camp over the summer. For the first time, Jace felt like he belonged, like he mattered, but Rick resisted. You're still a kid, he said. You don't know what you want. No, Dad, Jace replied. You don't know what I need. They argued for hours. Then something shifted. Rick pulled out an old wooden box from the closet. Inside were photos, his wedding day, a baby Jace on his mother's lap, ocean dives, shark tags. Memories Rick had buried. I've been angry for so long, Rick whispered, but she would want this. She'd want you to live. Jace left for Miami 3 weeks later. The camp was everything he dreamed of. Oceans, science, and people who cared. One day, while out on a tagging expedition, a storm rolled in fast. A student fell overboard. The water was brutal. Jace dove in without thinking. The current dragged them both. Then familiar shadows appeared beneath them. The sharks. They circled again, this time guiding the two teens back toward the boat, nudging them, hurting them. Jace never doubted again. 2 years passed. Jace returned to Clearwater to speak at a conservation fundraiser. He stood on stage, a confident young man, surrounded by footage of sharks gliding like angels. I used to think the world didn't care if I disappeared, he told the crowd. But the sea, those creatures we fear, they showed me I was wrong. My life mattered, and now I want to spend it protecting theirs. Applause thundered. Rick in the front row wiped his eyes. Back at Crystal Sands Beach, Jace walked along the pier one last time before heading to college. The water sparkled. The wind whispered. He tossed a flower into the waves. For you, Mom, he said. And below, in the deep, a familiar fin surfaced for just a moment before disappearing into the blue.